Have you ever walked away from a conversation and thought, I shouldn't have said that? One impulsive comment, one poorly timed reaction, and suddenly, the consequences aren't just a little awkward, they're devastating. You might lose someone's trust, damage a relationship, or miss an important opportunity. In a world where everyone's shouting to be heard, the rarest kind of power is silence. But here's the truth. Being silent isn't about weakness or avoidance. It's about control, precision, power. Choosing when to speak, and just as importantly, when not to, is an art. And like any art, it takes practice, discipline, and above all, self-mastery. This is exactly why Stoic philosophy has stood the test of time. It's not a retreat for the timid. It's a daily guide for those who want to remain calm in the storm, lead with strength, and live with clarity and intention. Stoicism teaches us how to master our emotions, focus only on what we can control, and understand the deep wisdom. In measured speech, most people let their words run wild. But if you've ever felt like your mouth spoke faster than your mind, this video is for you. Stick with us to the end, and you'll walk away with 7 practical tools that can turn your words into assets, not liabilities. Tool number 1, listen more, speak less. Think about it. How often are we really listening? Most conversations today are battles of attention. You speak, they interrupt. You share, they redirect. And just like that, it becomes a performance, not a connection. Take one scroll through social media, and you'll see it. Millions of people yelling, "Listen to me," but barely anyone truly listening to others. In Stoic thinking, listening isn't passive, it's powerful. It's the mark of a strong mind that knows when not to perform. Like a skilled warrior who doesn't strike at every opportunity, a wise person observes, waits, and only moves when it counts. They don't use words to avoid silence. They use silence to deeply understand. Let me paint you a scene. Dave is a rideshare driver in Manhattan. He's not the chatty type. One day, a woman climbs into his back seat. She looks exhausted. Her eyes are red. For 40 minutes, Dave says just one thing: "Good morning." He places a bottle of water in the cup holder, turns off the radio, and occasionally checks the rearview mirror. No noise, no small talk. When she steps out, she leaves a folded note behind. "I just lost my father. Thank you for letting me sit in silence. This ride was the kindest thing I've experienced all week." Dave didn't speak, but his silence said everything. "I'm here. I see you." Listening, truly listening, is more than staying quiet while someone else talks. It's being fully present. It's asking thoughtful questions like, "Do you mean ... rather than waiting for your turn to talk. It's respecting silence instead of rushing to fill it. The best listeners don't interrupt with advice or fake empathy. They don't rush to respond. They pause. They stay with the discomfort. And when they speak, it's not to fix, it's to connect. In meetings, these people might be the quietest ones in the room, yet they have the clearest view of what's actually happening. In relationships, they're the ones everyone turns to when it really matters. Great salespeople, they ask more than they pitch. Great doctors, they hear the emotion behind the symptoms. Great friends, they can sit beside you in silence and still make you feel understood. Want to sharpen your own listening skill? Here's a challenge. For 1 week, keep track of how many questions you ask versus how many opinions you offer. Aim to ask at least twice as often as you speak. Try letting the other person do 70% of the talking. You'll be amazed how much more people open up and how much less you need to prove. Because here's the surprising part. The better you get at listening, the less you'll feel the need to speak. When you truly understand, you don't have to guess. You don't fight over details because you see the whole picture. And in those moments of deep listening, something beautiful happens. You begin to hear yourself more clearly. You notice your impatience, your ego, your need to jump in. And little by little, that awareness becomes strength. So don't just speak to be heard. Learn the art of listening and discover that silence, when chosen with purpose, is one of the most powerful voices you'll ever have. As we explored earlier, mastering silence and listening with intention are the first steps to reclaiming your power in conversation. But the real challenge often lies deeper, not in your voice, but in your mind. Have you ever noticed yourself half listening, just waiting for your turn to jump in and say, "Let me tell you my story"? Becoming aware of that urge is a sign of real growth. It means you're no longer trying to win the conversation. You're trying to truly connect. Epictetus once reminded us, nature gave us one tongue and 2 ears so we could hear twice as much as we speak. Nature doesn't make mistakes. That ratio is a lesson. The real question is, are you living in reverse? When you begin to tame your words through active listening, you realize the issue isn't your mouth, it's your mind. What causes most of us to say the wrong thing? It's not always ignorance, it's emotion, rising too fast, hijacking our thoughts. So how do we control the storm within? What if emotion has been the invisible manipulator in every conversation you've ever had? That brings us to tool number 2, control your emotions. There's a hard truth many people only understand after cracks begin to show in their relationships. Words are never harmless. They're like arrows. Once released, that's it. You can't take them back. And tragically, most arrows aren't launched by reason. They're fired by raw emotion. Anger, fear, hurt. A single moment of emotional outburst can destroy something that took years to build. That's why mastering your emotions before you speak isn't a luxury. It's a survival skill. Stoicism doesn't demand eternal silence. It demands awareness. It teaches that true freedom isn't the ability to say whatever comes to mind, but the strength to pause when needed. That strength only comes from emotional control. Have you ever been so angry that you wanted to shout or insult someone, only to regret every word minutes later? Or maybe you let a secret slip, just to win an argument, only to realize you've lost someone's trust forever. These moments aren't rare. They happen daily, in homes, at workplaces, in comment sections on social media. Let me tell you a story, one you need to hear. John, a longtime manager at a tech company in Chicago, was respected for his calm and steady leadership. But one day, in a tense meeting, his boss harshly criticized him in front of the entire team. In that moment, John snapped. He interrupted, raised his voice, and accused his boss of being unfair, even claimed the team didn't respect him. The room fell silent. By the end of the day, John had been removed from his role. Here's the painful irony. John wasn't wrong for how he felt, but he lost because of how he reacted. If he had taken just 3 seconds to breathe, everything could have gone differently. Sometimes a deep breath is all that stands between a wise response and a reckless reaction. And that's the mental shift Stoicism calls us to make daily. Don't speak when you're angry. Don't explain when you're hurt. Don't respond when your mind is still storming. Modern neuroscience confirms what the Stoics understood centuries ago. When emotions run high, the amygdala, the brain's emotional center, takes over, temporarily shutting down the prefrontal cortex, the center of logic and reason. That means, in moments of anger, your brain literally becomes less intelligent. You're not speaking from clarity, you're speaking from chaos. Are you okay with being the spokesperson for your anger? Now here's what's surprising. Emotional control isn't suppression, it's transformation. And one of the most effective techniques is this. Label your emotions with precision. Don't just say, "I'm mad." Say, "I feel disrespected," or "I feel ignored." When you name an emotion accurately, you activate the logical part of your brain, giving yourself just enough distance from the wave to avoid drowning in it. Another helpful strategy, rooted in behavioral psychology, is to write it out. When you feel like exploding, grab a pen and write down what you want to say, but don't send it. Handwriting forces your brain to shift from raw reaction to structured thinking. Often, within minutes, you'll no longer want to say those words at all. Abraham Lincoln used to do this. When he was angry with someone, he'd write a brutal letter and then never send it. Put it in a drawer, never to be sent. They called it a letter of venting. It wasn't meant to be read by others. It was for him to regain clarity. That's how Lincoln stayed remarkably composed, even during the tensest political storms. You can also choose an anchor, a small action to reset your mind. It could be touching your wrist or exhaling slowly through your mouth. Tiny action, big impact. It's your brain's way of saying, "Paul, take control." These aren't random tricks. They're your shield, protecting your dignity and your peace. Learning to control your words isn't about silencing yourself forever. It's about knowing when to speak, what to say, and how to say it. Sometimes the greatest power lies not in what we choose to say, but in what we choose not to have. You ever found yourself in a situation where, because you lost control of your emotions, you said something you deeply regret? If so, share it in the comments, not to feel ashamed, but so we can all learn to live stronger, calmer, and speak with more purpose. And don't forget to subscribe, so that every day you'll be reminded by Stoic philosophy that to master your emotions is to master yourself. Number 3, speak less than you think. There's a small but dangerous habit most of us fall into, saying whatever comes to mind. We call it being honest, keeping it real or not, bottling things up. But the truth is, blurting out every thought isn't honesty. It's a lack of discipline. People with depth aren't those who think less, but those who know how to think enough and say just enough. Think back to your last coffee catch-up with friends. Someone mentioned they were thinking about changing jobs. Before they even finished, someone jumped in to be honest. Switching jobs now is a dumb move. A few more just being real comments followed, and what started as sharing turned into criticism. The vibe shifted. The person went quiet, nodded to end the chat, and maybe, just maybe, they'll never open up to that group again. A valid point said at the wrong time, in the wrong way to the wrong person, might as well be completely wrong. Stoics don't stay silent because they have nothing to say. They stay silent because they understand something simple. Every word has a cost. It could be your energy, your privacy, your gift, relationships, The more you grow, the less you want to speak. Not because you're empty inside, but because you're done cleaning up the mess of careless words. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Wisdom, in many cases, isn't about speaking up to prove you're right. It's about having the strength to stay quiet, to be misunderstood and still stay calm in your own skin. Let me tell you a story. It's worth a minute of your time, because somewhere in it lies a lesson we all need at some point in life. Thomas was sharp, a smart, quick-thinking guy working in finance. He had knowledge, logic, and a mind like a whip. In one internal meeting, his boss presented a new idea that wasn't well thought out. Thomas was irritated and immediately jumped in to point out every flaw, his words sharp as knives. He wasn't wrong, just too fast, too blunt. His boss didn't react then. But a few weeks later, Thomas was quietly removed from a major project. He was confused. The truth, leadership felt he wasn't a cultural fit. He didn't lose because he lacked ability. He lost because he was right at the wrong time. From that point on, Thomas changed. He began writing down his thoughts before meetings, rereading them 10 minutes later, asking himself, "Am I saying this to contribute or to prove I'm smart?" If the answer was the second, he kept quiet. Within months, something shifted. People started paying real attention when he did speak. His silence became a signal of depth, not hesitation. You can start the same way. It's simple. When a thought pops into your head, don't say it right away. Instead, imagine every word costs money. You'd speak less and mean it more. Give yourself a buffer. Just 3 seconds between thought. Picking up from where we left off, when you pause before speaking, even for just 3 seconds, you give yourself the space to ask a simple but powerful question. Is this moment, this thought, this person, worth the words I'm about to spend? That single moment of reflection can change the entire direction of a conversation. Have you ever felt like the more you talk, the more pressure you put on yourself to prove something? Every time you share a plan, an idea, or even a feeling, you open yourself up to scrutiny, to needing to defend or justify it. But if you keep even just a little to yourself, you preserve the freedom to adapt, to change course, or even to let go without explanation. Not everyone needs to know what you're thinking, and you don't need to speak to prove that you matter. The right kind of silence is invisible armor. It protects you from emotional misunderstandings, drama, and the exhausting battles that don't deserve your energy. So ask yourself, are you speaking to connect, or out of fear that silence will make you disappear? Choose your words. Choose your timing. Choose your audience. That's not just communication, that's survival. And before you rush to share your next big idea, remember, ideas are like seeds. If you speak them too soon, the wind of outside opinion might scatter them before they've had the chance to take root and grow. Why is silence the ultimate weapon in protecting what matters most to you? And why are Stoics so intentional about guarding their plans? Because the answer could change the way you share your dreams with the world. Which leads us to principle number 4, guard your plans. There's something odd about modern life. The more people talk about their goals, the less they seem to achieve them. They announce their next big move on social media. This year's the year. I'm starting this. I'm learning that. A few months later, silence. No follow-through. Why? Because talking, when unchecked, is the most powerful sedative for action. It lulls you into believing you're moving forward, when all you've really done is perform progress. Imagine sitting at a cafe one morning and overhearing someone passionately pitch a startup idea. I'm opening a community-based coffee shop. Books, cozy vibes, a hub for connection. It sounds inspiring, even beautiful. But 6 months later, you return to that same cafe. There's no new coffee shop. The person is still sitting at the same table, drinking the same latte, telling a new version of the same story. It's not because they're lazy. It's because they've unknowingly fallen into a trap, the illusion of progress. Our brains don't easily distinguish between talking and doing. When we share plans, we receive instant rewards, praise, encouragement, approval, and it feels like we've already done something, but we haven't. Marcus Aurelius didn't post about living simply. He just lived simply. He didn't talk about discipline. He practiced it quietly. That's what made him powerful. Think of it this way. If you were a tree, would you use your energy to grow strong, lasting roots, or to shake your branches just so others think you're growing? Now here's a story that sticks with you, not because it's about a legend, but because it's about someone who might remind you of yourself. Jake, 34, a software developer, hated his corporate job. He dreamed of building an app and breaking free. He had ideas, talent, charisma. He created pitch decks, mapped out timelines, told his friends. Everyone believed in him. But month after month, not a single line of code was written. Then one day, a friend said something simple and brutal. "Jake, you're addicted to talking about success, not building it." That hit hard. The next morning, Jake deleted his old posts, stopped sharing, and opened a blank code editor. 3 months of silence followed. No updates, no hype. 6 months later, his app quietly launched on the App Store. No fanfare, just results. Jake's story makes us ask ourselves, are we doing the work or just describing the dream? If you see yourself in that moment, that's not failure, that's awakening. Realizing that by guarding your plans, you protect your energy and give yourself the space to finally bring them to life. Look at Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary. Picking up from the story of Thomas Sankara and the power of quiet action, we begin to understand that when you stop performing, people start noticing. Sankara never gave grand speeches about simplicity. He lived it. He sold off the government's luxury vehicles, halved his presidential salary, and cultivated vegetables in the garden of the presidential palace. When your actions speak louder than your announcements, your silence becomes your strength. To truly live this principle, try one powerful challenge. Stop sharing your plans for 30 days. No social posts, no casual humble brags. And every time you feel the itch to talk about what you're going to do, pause and write down one concrete action instead. Not because you don't deserve applause, but because you deserve results. Pause here for a moment. You've already come halfway, and if you're still with me, it's because you're not just curious about philosophy, you're ready to live it. The path of mastering your words is bold. It requires presence, discipline, and awareness. But in the chapters ahead, you'll gain practical strategies, not lofty theory. to turn Stoicism into a real daily practice. Walk this path fully. And if something here resonated, even a quiet like can be powerful. That kind of silent support ripples out, just like the Stoic spirit, deep, calm, and unshakably strong. This brings us to number 5. Choose your confidants. There's a form of emotional sabotage that many people commit daily without even realizing it. Oversharing, talking too much, and to the wrong people. You may think you're building connection, but in reality, you might be slowly digging your own trap. Every over-disclosure becomes another shovel of dirt, until one day, someone who isn't you uses your own words to bury your reputation. Harsh? Yes. But think back. Of all the people you've confided in, how many have truly stayed silent out of respect, not just because they haven't had the chance to weaponize what you shared? Stoicism urges us to control our words, but that doesn't just mean speaking less. It means choosing carefully who gets to hear the words you do share. You don't need to isolate yourself, but you do need to be selective. The longer you live, the more you realize not everyone deserves access to your internal system files. Have you ever sat beside a stranger on a train or a bus and suddenly found yourself spilling deeply personal struggles? Maybe it felt safe because they seemed neutral, uninvolved. But precisely because they're uninvolved, they owe no loyalty to what you've said. In a world built on the currency of information, naivety is expensive. I once knew a guy named Mark, a personal trainer just starting out. He confided in someone he believed was a trusted friend, revealing marketing plans, financial stress, and unpaid debts. That friend nodded, listened, and later opened a gym right next door, targeting Mark's exact clientele. A few offhand remarks, like, "I don't know how much longer I can keep this going," ended up scaring away potential investors. Not because Mark lacked potential, but because he revealed his weaknesses too early and to the wrong person. This kind of betrayal doesn't only happen to entrepreneurs. It happens at work when you vent to the wrong coworker and your boss starts treating you differently. It happens in families where honest confessions are twisted into tools for control. It happens online where people pour out their emotions, believing that saying it is the same as solving it. But feeling lighter isn't always the same as being wiser. So what's the solution? Not silence, but filtering. Train yourself to pause before sharing. Ask, will saying this make me stronger or give someone else power over me? If you're not sure, don't say it. Everything you say is stored in someone's memory, in future conversations you won't be present for, or worse, in a plan being formed against you. Use the 3-time appearance rule. Before sharing anything below the surface, someone should show up in your life. At least 3 times. Once in joy, once in pain, and once in silence. Anyone can seem kind when things are going well, but someone who stays when there's nothing to gain and keeps your words safe, that's the person you trust. Picking up from the importance of choosing your confidants, let's go one step further. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world, especially when even your silence can be misread. Want a real-world example of strategic restraint? Look at how CEOs guard their new product secrets. It's not because they distrust their teams. It's because they understand one painful truth. Leaks don't always come from enemies. They come from mouths with no long-term loyalty. Your life is a product in development. Don't let someone judge the prototype and define your worth before the final version is ready. Silence can be your last line of defense against hidden attacks, and the person who truly understands you won't need many words to do so. They'll see you clearly, even in your quiet. There's an old line from scripture that says, "Do not cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them and turn to tear you apart." The message isn't that you don't have something valuable. It's that not everyone is capable of honoring what you offer. So ask yourself, who are you really sharing your truth with? And are they protectors of your trust or opportunists in disguise? One day you'll realize something strange. The person who knows the most about your story might not understand you at all, while the one who truly gets you might not need to know every detail. That's when it clicks. Silence isn't just the absence of words. It's the presence of wisdom. But here comes the hard part. How much silence is enough? Where's the line between wise restraint and cold distance? This leads us to number 6. Silence is power. Silence is not about muting your voice. It's about choosing with intention when to use it. And that choice comes at a cost. It's not glamorous, it's not easy, but it is powerful. Because holding your tongue when you have every reason to unleash your words, that takes more strength than winning any argument. In a world where everyone has a microphone, social media, podcasts, live streams, who dares to stay quiet? If that person is you, maybe you're not reacting to the world. Maybe you're owning your place in it. Think back. Have you ever been in a room where someone said something blatantly wrong about you in front of others? Your gut twists, your face burns, your mouth is ready to fire. But you don't. You stay still, you nod, you walk away. That silence might not feel satisfying in the moment, but it hits different. It says, "I don't need to prove anything to you." And in that moment, you're not just controlling your mouth, you're mastering yourself. Marcus Aurelius rarely spoke publicly. His meditations were letters to himself. In one quiet line he wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Don't imitate. Don't retaliate. Don't let their behavior shape yours. You don't need to strike back to win. You simply need to avoid becoming what you despise. Ever notice how some people say the smartest things, yet nothing sticks? Meanwhile, others say nothing, and yet we remember them forever. That's because words are sound, but action is gravity. Sound fades, gravity pulls. Always. There's a side of silence that terrifies people, the fear of being misunderstood. We're afraid that staying quiet makes us look weak, clueless, or unsure. But here's the twist. Silence creates a kind of mystery, and mystery breeds influence. People don't know how to read you, so they lean in, they guess, they wonder, and in that gap, you gain control. But how do you live this out in a world that constantly presses your buttons? The answer lies in the small moments. When someone you love is upset and you're tempted to drag up every old argument, can you pause, take their hand, and just listen instead of defending yourself? When a colleague throws subtle shade in a meeting, can you smile, look your boss in the eye, and deliver your point calmly, clearly, without letting emotion hijack your tone? Let me tell you about David, a designer working in a competitive firm. One day, a coworker stole his idea and pitched it as his own. Everyone clapped. David said nothing. No confrontation, no call-out. But a week later, when it came time to execute the idea, the team turned to David because they knew where the depth lived. He didn't speak. He acted. And from that day forward, people looked at him differently. Picking up from David's story, we see that true influence doesn't come from reacting, but from staying grounded, and often staying silent. When used with purpose, silence flips the script. People don't listen to you just because you're speaking. They listen because they know that when you do speak, it means something. And sometimes, silence is the medicine you didn't know you needed. When we stop voicing every passing frustration and simply sit with our feelings, those emotions begin to dissolve. It's a principle echoed in Zen, Taoism, and Buddhism, where non-action, or Wu Wei, is a deeply intentional act. You're not avoiding, you're processing. You're giving your emotions the space to transform rather than explode. So here's a challenge. Try a full day of silence. No arguments, no proving points, no vague story posts directed at someone you're upset with. Just observe. Track every moment you wanted to speak but chose not to. At the end of the day, ask yourself, if I had said something, would it have truly made things better? Maybe you're not the most eloquent speaker, and that's perfectly fine. You can still make every word matter by saying less, by speaking only when it truly counts. Don't let your voice become cheap, simply because you gave it away too often. Silence is power, but only if you're strong enough to hold it. If you've ever chosen not to react and later realized that decision made you stronger, drop a comment that says, "Strength in silence," to mark that turning point, the moment you stopped reacting like you used to. Which brings us to number 7, let achievements speak. Most of us carry a deeply human need, the desire to be recognized. And often, the fastest way to feel validated is to talk about what we plan to do, what we're building, or what we hope to achieve. We imagine that saying it out loud proves we're serious. But here's the truth. The more we talk about something before we do it, the more we risk losing it. Not because someone sabotages us, but because talking too much, too soon, drains the energy we need to follow through. The more we assert with words, the more likely we are to fall into the illusion of progress, when in reality, we haven't even started. Those who live by Stoic principles understand this well. Every word costs something. And every time you share a plan, justify a choice, or try to prove your worth, you're spending energy that should have gone into action. That's why they choose to act first and speak later. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they know real credibility doesn't come from talking. It comes from results. In a world where everyone's shouting, the person who knows when to stay silent commands the most attention. Think about the last time you told someone you were going to start working out, learn a new language, write a book, or launch a project. What happened afterward? If you're like most people, the excitement probably faded quickly. Why? Because by saying it out loud, you got a small hit of satisfaction, that brief sense of having already accomplished something. Your brain took the reward without paying the price, and your momentum disappeared. That doesn't mean you're weak. It means you unknowingly traded action for illusion. Purposeful silence isn't avoidance. It's a strategy. It's like planting a seed. You don't dig it up every day to check its roots. You let it grow quietly, steadily, and away from impatient eyes. People are the same. The most meaningful efforts need protection from rush judgment. When you keep your plans to yourself, you create a protected space for them to take shape without distortion. And beyond that, staying silent becomes a discipline. Not everyone can do it. It's easy to show effort. It's much harder to make progress quietly without asking for applause. But that's exactly what sets you apart. Silence demands you trust your own process, that you don't need to be seen, understood, or congratulated. You just need to know what you're doing and keep doing it. Because when the results arrive, you won't need to say a word. They'll speak for you, and what they say will carry more than recognition. It will carry trust, not because you promised, but because you delivered. No hype, no spotlight, just truth, backed by action. The kind of truth that makes people pause, take notice, and see you differently. Because you weren't trying to be noticed. You were becoming undeniable. Picking up from the power of becoming undeniable through quiet action, remember this: when your results speak for you, you no longer have to. So next time you're tempted to announce your plans, pause and ask yourself, what if I kept this to myself? Am I ready to let the result be the only voice that speaks? If the answer is yes, then you're already walking the right path. Because the person who can control their words is the one who is truly in control. And that's where all real value begins. In this video, we've explored 7 Stoic-inspired lessons to master your words, from listening deeply, managing emotions, holding back when it counts, to letting silence carry the weight of your intentions. These aren't just abstract ideas. They're practical, powerful tools to help you live with more clarity, more resilience, and more impact through the quiet strength that Stoicism teaches. Because the more you grow, the less you need to explain. Your actions begin to speak for you. Words can build or destroy, but when you learn to master them, you're not just shaping your speech, you're shaping yourself. That's the real power Stoicism offers: inner freedom, calm in the chaos, and an unshakable focus on the life you choose. If this video sparked something inside you, a shift, a challenge, a new awareness, give it a like. It might do the same for someone else. Share your thoughts in the comments below so we can learn and grow together. And if you know someone who needs more peace in their life, send this to them. A friend, a family member, ... anyone who could use a little stillness in their storm. Don't forget to subscribe, because your journey to mastering your words, your emotions, and yourself is just beginning. And what's coming next will help you keep going, grounded, calm, and strong. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.